Hello, this is Brooks Whittington with halfwheel.com. Today we're taking a look at the black one-finger V cutter. Now this is a simple, light, and extremely inexpensive V cutter that is available from multiple retailers, both online and brick and mortar. Now the only color option that this cutter comes in is black, as you see here, and the prices range from 50 cents, which is what we paid for ours, up to about $1.99 each, depending on where you get them. Now, in terms of physical specifications, the black one-finger V cutters is kind of an old school cutter in that it does not utilize the reverse V-cut method that most modern V cutters are using these days. That's where, like this cutter here, the center of the blade is the last part to come in contact with the tobacco. As you can see, the sides actually come into contact with the cap first. The black one-finger V cutter is the opposite in that the triangular shaped tip of the blade right here, right there, actually comes in contact with the cap first, and then the sides follow suit. It's a big difference in terms of how the blades work, and most modern V cutters are using the reverse method these days. Now, this cutter, the black one-finger V cutter, is entirely made out of plastic except for the blade, which is stainless steel, and it can cut up to about 56 ring gauge, but anything larger than that is really, really problematic, which I'll get to in a minute. The body weighs about 1 ounce, just a little bit less than 1 ounce, almost comically, light. When you're actually trying to use it, and it measures 2.25 inches high, 0.35 inches thick, with a total length of 2.25 inches when it's closed, and 3.1 inches when it's fully open like this. All right, now that's all out of the way, let's cut some cigars. Now, there are multiple issues with this cutter, and for the most part, those issues have a very large overriding theme, and that is the fact that the cutter and its components are just too small. They're too small to effectively cut cigars. They're too small to actually hold the cutter correctly and well. Just too small overall. So you get to the first part, which is the size of the cutter and the weight of the cutter itself. It's in my hands, I have very large hands, and in my hands, this is almost comically small. And even in somebody like Charlie's hands, it's still obviously just a very small and light cutter. It makes it difficult to actually hold the cigar cutter, and when you're especially when you're trying to get a cigar into that opening, and that's another issue. The opening size is too small. It's too shallow. It's too small, and you're not going to cut anything bigger than about a 56 ring gauge with this cigar. It's almost comical how small the cut actually is in cigar ring gauges bigger than about 56, and 56 is pushing it. It's almost useless for situations like that. And as you're trying to push this blade through, in terms of through the cap here, there are issues as well. So in order to actually use the cutter, you basically pick it up and you open up this side here on the right, assuming you're right-handed. I found the best way for me to use it is to put my middle finger on the side where the opening is, my thumb where the blade moves back and forth on that piece, and my index finger goes on the back to give it a little bit more, the whole thing a little bit more support. You take the cap of the cigar and you put it into the opening, and you push just a little bit. You're going to have to push because otherwise you're really not going to get a cut. You want to be careful not to break the cap, but you want to push enough to actually give yourself a little bit of support in that situation. Now, as you cut through as I cut through the cap, you'll see one of the other issues, which is the fact that this blade, as it cuts through, it makes that cap and it makes that cigar actually jump just a little bit to the left, and that's because that's when that blade is actually entering that cap, and it makes for typically a very uneven and problematic cut. You'll see this as I cut through right here. You'll notice I'm pushing just a little bit as I'm cutting, and you can see that is problematic in terms of damage and, stuff leaving out and that kind of thing. Now, out of the 36 cigars that I cut with this cutter for this review, 31 of them, 87%, had issues, ranging from fairly minor to, something more significant like this, where it's just jagged and situations like that. There were a couple that had virtually no issues, but they were very few and far between. And really, that's the bottom line here, is that it's just so hard to get a decent cut, even a decent cut with this cutter. And even if you do get one, it's certainly not the norm. And so in the end, can I recommend the black one-finger V cutter? The answer is no. And this is actually a fairly simple, conclusion. This cutter, while cheap, extremely cheap, and extremely light, certainly advantages when it comes to, carrying around a cutter. Both of those things are great things, but it doesn't override the fact that it just cannot cut cigars very well at all, and certainly not consistently. Cigars are damaged. Cigars are, have issues with them, ranging from, broken caps to pieces of tobacco left over in just about every single cigar that I use this cutter on. It's not worth the 50 cents if you're going to, destroy the $10, $20 cigar that you're actually using the cutter on. My advice, go out and buy a somewhat more expensive, and by that I mean like $4, to get something like the Craftsman's Bench Cutter, a much superior product that will not break the bank. You certainly won't miss the difference in price, and it will give you a much, much better, product and conclusion when you're talking about actually cutting the cigars. That's my opinion. For more reviews and news on premium cigars, go to halfwheel.com.